Good morning, everyone, and today we're checking out a brand new video from Josh Scorcho of the top 10 sympathetic villains. Let's hop in and see how these villains deserve our tears.
I'm not bad. I'm just drawn that way.
Whatever
Some
you
people
say.
just want to watch the world burn. Others are likely not given a choice. We at Fiery Joker Productions love our ne'er-do-wells, so it only feels right that we give some love to the villains who we can't help but pity. Considering the nasty things
That
they've
is
done,
true.
how much do these baddies deserve our sympathy or mercy? Having a sad backstory, a sad villain does not make. Are they forced to turn to the dark side?
Oh,
Can their
Mr.
crimes
Negative.
be justified from a certain point of view, not just in their eyes? What choices do they make, and do they attempt to alleviate their actions? And finally, personality. Our crooked individuals should be likable enough for us to feel sorry for, but we want to avoid filling the list with nothing but sad boys. We only have so many tissues available.
Yeah, this isn't the top 20 sad villains. It's just sympathetic villains. Top 20 sad villains. You know, I wonder if he's actually ever going to do that. Or if he has already done that. We'll just have to live and see. Oh, Prototype. Haven't seen a lot of love for that game in a long time.
Innocent politicians, they be oxymoronic.
Oh boy, the timing for this one couldn't have been worse, but I have a job to do, so not for broadcast anyone. I first talked about this hidden
For a second I thought it was going to be Senator Armstrong.
gem last summer with how Prime Minister Julia Salisbury is a top-tier psychopath. But for this list, I'm going to talk about her opposition.
You need to wake up!
Alan James begins this game as basically a parody of a real-life political talk show host. Can you guess which one?
Look at their faces! That's not what cows look like!
But I
Yeah.
will stomp your head in if you start a fight with me, you thug scum!
It's all coming from the water, the chemicals,
I can tell.
pumping it full of belief juice.
I don't like them putting chemicals in the water that turn the friggin' frogs gay!
Yep, a clear parody of Ben Shapiro. He's a
Oh,
pretty
what?
comical
Wait.
character in the game's first couple of broadcasts. Fast forward to the third broadcast, however, and he's seemingly out of the picture. You can't even play any of his ads anymore. Instead, we start hearing and seeing signs of a resistance forming against Advance. A resistance in the form of an orange fist and people standing outside protesting. A resistance we'd come to know as Disrupt. During the infamous Heatwave broadcast, Jeremy Donaldson holds the studio at gunpoint, ordering you to play a tape revealing the spokesman behind this movement. Regardless of whether or not you play the tape, Disrupt's mouthpiece is revealed. And it's exactly who you think it is. From this point
Yeah,
on,
of
Alan
course.
James takes on a more earnest persona, hacking into your broadcast with urgent messages to the people telling them to rally against Advance and fight back against their oppressive agenda. How does Alan plan to do that? Terrorism, of course.
Oh,
What's
great.
the worst that could happen?
And there it goes. Oh, jeez. Well, I think that means I'm out of a job.
See? No consequences.
Okay. Jokes aside, Alan James is on the list for a reason. The whole point of Not for Broadcast is being able to see the good and the bad in both sides. Some will see Alan James as a shining example of freedom, while others will condemn him for his destructive behavior. But just look at the decision you have to make. You're choosing between a freedom fighter who's off his rocker at worst, and
Yeah.
someone who just genocided the population equivalent of South Sudan. However, I think the
Holy
biggest reason we can sympathize with that is
damn.
because he's merely the mouthpiece of the real masterminds behind Disrupt, who are revealed to us in two of the endings that take place in the game's finale. 4 members of the World Council with plans to overthrow Advance with their own radical agenda that could result in the deaths of hundreds of
Oh,
thousands, if
boy.
not millions of people. Alan James was nothing more than a means to an end for these guys. It's even revealed that they had plans to kill Alan James after they were done with him. Him and all of his type. You get down to it, Alan James is the hero of it.
Okay, not trying to defend him or anything, but are we sure they're talking about, you know, and not just people that are following like his mindset, you know, all the people of Disrupt?
His own story. He truly believes that the destruction he
Two
causes
options.
will inspire change throughout the country. Sure, his idea of justice is shallow, but he's still the lesser of two evils. And given just how despicable his opponent's actions were, can you really blame him? Plus, at the end of the day, not all of his actions were his alone. He was being paraded around like a puppet by people who truly didn't have his best interests at heart and saw him as expendable. On top of that, even with all his destruction, he at least makes sure no civilians get killed. Unless you let Jeremy Donaldson die. Then he goes absolutely nuts. Starts killing people in the Channel 1 studio, including assassinating Prime Minister Salisbury. And taking the entire studio down in an unaliving bombing if you don't play the tape at the end. Yeah, there's a reason why he's only number 10. But when you listen to what he says and you look at the situation you're faced with, his book says it all. Alan James is right.
Also, I have to say, that's something. Moving on to number 9, and it's...
Hey, Trails in the Sky is getting a remake this year. I'll take that as a sign to talk about one of Trails' sympathetic villains, and they have a lot.
Oh,
like
wow.
most characters have some sort of tragic backstory that feeds into their complex character motivations.
Of course they do.
It's an excuse to create more flashback art. Also, since there is a remake coming out, I'll put a quick spoiler warning. Most Trail fans know the name of Hamel, a small town at the edge of the Erebonian Empire that was massacred by warhawks to trigger a war with a neighboring country. The
Damn,
survivors
that
of Hamel
sucks.
were very few. One of them was Luve, a young teen with aspirations of swordplay and a sweetheart named Karen. You know, the classic JRPG backstory.
Yes,
said
very
tragedy
classic.
caused Karen to die and led Luve and her brother Joshua to go on a journey, not to defeat the evil empire, but to join a shady society whose plans still aren't fully known after 13 games. Luve
Oh my
trained
God.
with the sword and became
13 games and we still don't know what these people are trying to do. Damn.
Ouroboros' most powerful warriors. His despair of losing his home and family became rage towards humanity and fuel to put them on trial. He worked with Ouroboros to enact their gospel plan, causing chaos all over Liberal. Despite that chaos, he still shows restraint and respect to his opponents, sympathizing with people like Agate, who had a similar tragedy to him, and Joshua, who went on a new path separate from him. However, he remains true to his convictions, even willing to kill Joshua to show him what he believes in. It isn't until Joshua defeats him both physically and emotionally that he realizes that what Karen wants isn't to put humanity on trial, but to help those who fall the same fate she did. And while this realization has Luve wanting to leave Ouroboros, it's short-lived. He
Damn.
sacrifices himself shortly after to allow Joshua and Estelle to defeat Weissman, the leader of the gospel plan. Doing so realizes why Karen did the same thing 10 years prior and tells Joshua not to save others by sacrificing himself, but to save others by living.
Live to
Luve only
protect
shows
it.
up for the first 2 games, technically, but the impact of his story
Technically.
is present throughout the rest of the series, with other Ouroboros members detailing their own experiences with the Blade Lord on several occasions. It goes to show what impact one person has over many people. Common theme of the series as a whole. Almost
It's an echo
to
effect.
a fault, honestly.
Well, we move on from the Grandmaster of 9 to number 8. It's...
Fire Emblem has a massive catalog of villains with a tragic upbringing that leads them to a path of darkness. However, most of them show way too little remorse or conscience over their actions, so calling them sympathetic is kind of a misnomer. Now,
Yeah,
some of these
very
do make
big
for good
stretch.
cautionary tales, but others could give Vegeta-Lo a run for his money. Sure,
What
we could
the-
just pick one of the many brainwashed folks or Camus stand-ins for the list, but we're looking for someone who's both conscious and willing in their actions while still having the sensible awareness that makes them redeemable. Standing tall among these few is Tellius's own Sephiran. The Prime Minister of Bangian doesn't
That name is extremely close to Sephiroth.
appear in the story very
Coincidence?
often, but the role he
Possibly.
plays is extremely crucial in shaping the many conflicts across the Radiant Saga. And because of how massive his story is, we're
Holy.
gonna have to start from the beginning. In Tellius' past, Sephiran was known as Leiran of the Heron tribe, and an aid to the heroes of the goddess Ashura. The champions vowed to maintain the peace within the land so that when the goddess rose from her sleep in a millennia, she'd be
Okay.
welcomed to a world worth preserving. Sephiran bore witness to far too many atrocities committed by mankind towards the beastfolk. No matter what he does,
yes.
there's no slowing down the constant oppression. Just when he was about to lose hope, however, he found out that his descendant, a Bangian Empress, was willing to stick up for his cause by announcing her heritage as a spawn of both human and beastfolk. It was a thrilling
that's
revelation for him. But like a lot of political complications, good things don't come easy. Guess what happened to the Empress?
Why? For all the power of Benyon.
Oh,
So,
Jeez.
the Empress was killed by the Senate, and who was blamed for it? The neighboring Heron tribe, Sephiron's own people. Benion's citizens
It
went on
always
a
happens.
frenzy, massacring nigh every Heron folk in the Serenus forest. So, picture this. You work tirelessly for hundreds of years to maintain peace for an entire land just to see it get
Yep.
worse regardless, and the one sliver of hope you get to make it all work out in the end not only gets taken away from you,
Oh, yeah.
but so is everything else you ever had.
It's a very
It
classic
takes
story.
a supernatural level of patience and charity to not snap from that and go scorched earth.
Completely.
And Sephiron is, understandably, not that person. Tired of the endless cycle of strife resulting from the arrogance of humans and the weakness of the beast folk, Sephiron initiated a plan to break the vow and awaken the goddess earlier than promised. To do this,
Ooh,
he
that's
has to
not good.
incite as much chaos as possible. He picked up Zelgus, armed him as the Black Knight, and had him carry out several missions, including aiding the Mad King's army and fighting alongside the Daean rebellion. As a politician of Benyon, he takes advantage of the Senate's own devious schemes to aid his own. Primarily, the Senate's blood pact inciting Dane to fight alongside Benyon in taking down Gallia's beast army, leading to a massive clash between various factions that would lead
That
to
is a lot of
Austria's
beast.
awakening. Once all Atelius is turned to stone, Sephiron will complete his mission. Now, with all that said, Sephiron isn't exactly this cold-hearted genocidal maniac that this big elaborate plan might paint him as. He's much more nuanced. When he takes up the part of Benyon's prime
simple.
minister, he looks after the new Empress Saniki with his utmost care, even rescuing her from being held hostage by the Senate. And when he finds out about his missing heir, he protects her through Zelgus. When he has to fight both of his kin as well as his own fellow Herons, he can't bring it upon himself to lay a finger on him. Adding on to that, he saved
Wow.
Ike from a traumatizing childhood
Yeah,
and offered
respectful.
Nacella assurance that he wouldn't fall victim to the Senate's blood pact. He helped a lot of good people survive the thick of war and even contributed to giving them hope to pull through and vanquish the true villains who corrupted the society of Tellius. Considering his end goal, he didn't have to do any of this. Heck, it's ultimately the reason his plan fails. But he did anyway, because deep down, he's still too compassionate to let good people suffer. And should you uncover
I can
every
respect
fragment
that.
of his hidden story, you get to offer him another chance to right his wrongs. Our heroes didn't exactly pity him, but as long as he showed genuine conscience to help those in need, they do believe he deserves mercy. The only reason Sephiron isn't higher is that I want to follow more of his character. He is
Agreed.
way too good for the little screen time he gets. I really wish we didn't have to replay the game on a higher difficulty just to get the huge story that follows him. Fire Emblem
what?
really likes to do that, don't they?
Oh, whoa.
Nevertheless, the Holy Chancellor was able to hold on to a level of conscious and competent morality despite the copious levels of despair in his life. That alone sets a
Yeah, I mean, with everything he suffered, anyone would have gone scorched earth, been like, alright, screw it, nuke it all.
very high
He
bar for
didn't.
sympathetic values that remain untouched by villains across the series, even today.
Like, also, I give that guy some damn respect. And on to number 7 with that respect is...
They damn me, name me demon. Demon, then, renouncing former ties and titles. Lord of Dark,
Live a live.
Odio.
Yep, we've been here before, and still, I stand by that Erstid is one of gaming's finest fallen heroes. Beyond that of a standard villain, we follow Erstid from the beginning. We experience his protagonist's journey, how he was once a knight who fought and earned his right to become Lucretia's greatest knight, even winning the love of the Princess Althea. Sadly, it all
True
comes
love.
apart due to the devious plans of his false friend Strabo. He thought he
Strabo,
just
yes,
needed to
Strabo.
rescue his princess from a demon, but it was nothing more than a misdirection. A setup to lure Erstid into slaying his king and being framed for treason. From there, the entire world turned against him, and he had no one to seek help from.
damn.
All he had was the dying words of his monk telling him to hold on to hope that his princess still yearned for his rescue. So when Erstid pressed on, what was he greeted with? Strabo's heartless betrayal and Althea's disdain and disappointment for him, which led to her giving up.
Oh.
Where else is Erstid to go from here? Mentally, he's a
was
cornered mouse
terrible.
with no one to love or live for. He could either die like one or bite back with a force that spreads across time itself. Everything that happened thus
And he
far is to
did.
mold Ersted into the new Demon Lord. With his power, he can draw people from various eras, puppeteers incarnations across time, and worst of all, initiate absolute Armageddon. All of which
Whoa.
are motivated by sheer
Now that's honestly impressive.
hate. Hatred for the pain that comes from existence itself. And the sad part is, Ersted is stuck losing the battle regardless of what happens. If he got what he wanted, all that's left for him is an empty world while all he can do is sulk. Alone. Forever.
Yeah,
And when the
that's
heroes
very
across time
sad.
did manage to free him from Odio's mantle, there was nothing else for him. All he could do is decay into nothingness as his legacy became a warning that in the hearts of all, there's always a seat for the Demon King. Ersted's story is no
Which is
doubt a
unfortunately
harrowing
true.
tale of a hero who's drawn to villainy from how viciously he had his entire life torn. Most of the heroes do sympathize with him in this regard, but Akira, the one who doesn't, also brings up a good point. Ersted did all of this for himself. He's hurting others because he was wronged. In Akira's eyes, it's basically petty revenge, and he's not exactly wrong. Even
He is
Hong,
right.
someone who's come the closest to what Ersted dealt with, didn't want to put others through the pain he went through. You can feel the envy in Ersted's voice when he hears that. Deep down, he wanted to be that way, but by becoming what he is, he betrayed it. Heck, if he'd just been
gave
more
up.
conscious, he could have used his time-traveling powers to stop Strabo and save Althea before she lost her marbles. I wonder if there's a Meets His Assistant skit for that. Now,
Ooh,
even with
that
all
would've
that
been nice.
said, the fact that this game does acknowledge various sides of the story
Definitely a
is
good laugh.
really what makes Ersted such a good character. We're allowed to form our own conclusions based on whose experiences we agree with more. We can feel sorry for him, and
Does anyone knows how this guy, whenever he speaks, does not pronounce O in some words? He doesn't say victory or memory. He says memory and victory. That is just kind of strange and also a little difficult to actually say.
still hold
So
him
impressive.
accountable. Or even if we don't, we still get why he would reach his limit. Live Alive's expert dabbling in the limits of empathy only further highlights how profound the Hero Knight's twisted tale truly is.
From a tale of 8 generations, we move on to number 6.
Looks can be very deceptive with villains. Sometimes the guy that seems like he's getting kicks from manipulating and tricking you has ulterior motives that he genuinely believes in.
Oh, yes, the
Sometimes the
Queen.
villain can feel like they're the only sane one in an insane world. All that said, drawn to life. Yep, we talked about this
Ooh.
series in Devil Bosses with its villain Wilfrey, and he's back for seconds. But Josh, he's a representation of Lucifer. He's the devil. Yes, I know what I said. But remember,
I
he's
like the game.
specifically the Paradise Lost flavor of Lucifer. The bad boy rebel interpretation garners a little more sympathy than the actual, I deserve to be God, and your stupid humans are stupid creations, and you're stupid for making them.
Yeah,
So
he's
have
right.
some courtesy and taste because we're showing sympathy for the devil.
I like your style.
So Wilfrey, in the first game, yeah, no doubts about it, he's a spiteful dickhead who gets his kicks out of scattering the townsfolk and killing the mayor. He revels in this fact,
Oh, man,
seemingly
I
driven
remember
only
that.
by the belief that he's better than the creator everyone worships. But in the next chapter, everything's flipped on its head. Wilfrey returns and this time seems more motivated than ever to drain the color from the world. But his views on the creator shift.
And fun fact, because I'm not sure if he's going to mention it, whenever a building is drained of its color, it becomes completely inaccessible. How do I know this? I used to play the game, lost it years ago, and I just could never find it.
He no longer just believes he could do better than God, he believes that everyone has been lied to and abandoned by him. And over the course of the game, while he does his usual shtick of just messing with everyone, this is a usual through line of his. And when Mari, one of the main characters, joins him out of nowhere, you're right to think that Wilfrey brainwashed her or something. Because there's just no way anyone would willingly work with someone like him, right?
That's
When
what we
you track
believe.
Wilfrey down to his home turf, Mari states very plainly that, no, she chose her path. Wilfrey showed her something that shook her to her core, as we alluded to back in Devil Bosses. What was it? Well, beat the game and... Okay, so strap in because this is, heavy.
We got
so while
time?
most
Let's
of the world
go.
is populated by the Raposa, there's one exception. A human kid named Mike, who has no real idea what he's doing here. There's also Heather, a strange mute child who Wilfrey kidnaps in the second game, and she has this strange shadow scarring over half of her face. These two characters are far more important than what you're led to believe, because once you confront Wilfrey, you're hit with two sudden bombshells.
Uh-oh.
One, Wilfrey showed Mari something about
Like I said, it's been a long time, so I don't remember.
Mike, and far more pressing, two, stopping Wilfrey means ending the world. Surely this can't be a good idea. Surely. But you defeat Wilfrey, confident in the creator, and everyone but Mike and Heather fades, and then,
And there it goes.
well,
Oh, what the? Oh, what's going on?
excuse me, what? It's the Link's Awakening twist. Everything was a dream, a coma dream of Mike in the real world after a car crash that claimed his parents and scarred half his older sister Heather's face. And Wilfrey was trying to stop Mike from waking up because it would destroy the world. Oh, I get it.
Holy damn, it literally is a Link's Awakening.
So let's revisit everything with this in mind. Well, in the first game, they probably didn't have this twist in mind yet, so Wilfrey was more outwardly evil. Second game makes it abundantly clear what his motivations are. Wilfrey feels abandoned by the creator, by God, because his world is essentially fated to die when Mike wakes up. And if he succeeds in keeping the world alive by draining all the color, Mike will die. It's an existential nightmare he's trapped in.
Yeah, okay, so that is kind of messed up. Either Mike dies and the world stays alive, or the world dies and Mike wakes up alive. Oh, damn, that is so terrible.
And Wilfrey ultimately believes that no matter how evil he may seem to everyone else, he's doing it all for them. And he resents how they're just blindly following a creator that, to him, is just gonna abandon everyone to die. Yeah, the first game kinda keeps him lower, but oh, that second game is some juicy tragedy.
100%.
It's an unexpected, beautifully done, and tear-jerking twist on one of the most annoying tropes of all time. Well played, Fifth Cell. Well frickin' played.
I would love... So, as I was saying before that commercial cut, I was saying I would love for those games to be re-released, maybe as like a mega compilation or something. I mean, hell, they were able to bring Scribblenauts back. I know that wasn't Fifth Cell, but you know what I mean. Moving on to number 5.
Dr. Takuto Maruki is the new counselor at Shujin Academy, and the newest confidant in Persona 5 Royal. Now, you're probably looking at this guy and thinking, why is he here? He doesn't look like a mustache-twirling villain. And you're right to think that.
Well, you also talked about him in one of the boss songs list, didn't you?
He's a little eccentric, but he clearly means well. He was brought in to help the students through their problems, especially the victims of the game's first boss, Kamoshida.
How could you make yourself look like that?
About what he did, the better. Anyway, Maruki slowly bonds with the students to help them pass their issues and is taking an interest in studying the human mind. And offers free snacks! Oh, come on, how can you not trust a guy with free snacks? Hold that thought. Along the way, it's revealed that Maruki has a persona that can manipulate others' cognition. An ability he wasn't aware of at first. And when he discovers this power, does he use his persona's ability to create a mass army of enslaved students who bend to his will?
Nope.
No. He uses them to try and remove trauma from the students' minds, and even warp reality where people's dreams come true. A noble, kinda heartwarming goal, right?
Honestly respectable.
Maybe on paper, not so much in execution. His intentions are pure, but his methods are so very wrong. He's warping people's lives and the world around them, going so far as to rewrite their personalities if he can. He even encourages folks to give up on their dreams in the off chance that they're too difficult. Why triumph over adversity when the path of least resistance is much more tempting? The fact that he's doing all this without anyone's consent raises too many red flags.
Yeah, that
when we
becomes
finally
troublesome.
confront him, he doesn't want to fight us. He'd rather convince us that what he's doing is right and that we should put our faith in his intentions.
Oh, see? Yeah, this. Throw away your mask, the boss theme. This is what I was talking about. I'll be honest, that outfit is kind of cool, but I like the look of his persona more. This was gets like a golden skeleton
This shows that
sarcophagus.
despite how far he's fallen, he still has compassion for others. But his borderline tyrannical vision of trying to force happiness makes him a threat that we have to shut him down. We've mentioned many times how the road to hell is paved with good intentions, and it's safe to say that Maruki is the poster child for this philosophy. It's not fair to say he was a bad man, because he really wasn't. Everything he
He had good intentions, he just went about it the wrong way.
did, he wanted to help those that were plagued by trauma and suffering. Unfortunately, he allowed his noble intentions to be poisoned by arrogance when he tried to basically control humanity. Thankfully, by the epilogue, he's a straight-up good guy. His new position as a cab driver cleverly shows that he is willing to let others direct him, and cements that it's never too late to make a fresh start.
That's not bad. That's actually kind of good. Well, we move on to number 4. It's...
Man, Brothership reminds me just how well the Mario RPGs handled their villains. Like, who remembers Count Bleck and Dementio? Yes, it was that long ago.
Never
Super
played
Paper
them.
Mario came out in 2007. It's been 17 years, almost 2 decades. Wait until I tell you Bowser's Inside Story. Can
Played
drive
it,
soon.
beat it, loved
Nintendo
it.
games have always had that obscure layer of dark tones in their games, but Super Paper Mario takes it to a whole new level. Its primary villain is an omnicidal maniac who wants to destroy all worlds out of grief for a lost loved one. That's a tone setter!
It was
Count
his
Bleck
wife,
was once
wasn't it?
Lumiere, a member of the tribe of darkness whose purpose was to protect the Dark Prognosticus, a book prophesying the end of all worlds. Lumiere once met a human girl named Timpani. Enchanted by her kindness, Lumiere continued to visit her against the traditions of his tribe, and eventually, they fell in love. But Lumiere's father didn't approve of it, and sought to end it.
Yeah.
Lumiere's shock and rage at this caused him to use the Dark Prognosticus himself, destroying his home dimension and transforming into the villain known as Count Bleck. Bleck searched
And there it
tirelessly for Timpani, hoping she would be alive, but he never found her. In this despair, he decided that all worlds were meaningless if she wasn't in them. Using the prophecies at his
To think, all of this is just a broken heart. He loses the love of his life, his wife, and just is like, alright, erase everything.
disposal, he forced the marriage between Peach and Bowser to summon the Chaos Heart and used it to cast rifts over all worlds, hoping to send them into oblivion. Timpani was alive, however, found by the wizard Merlin, and to save her, he turned into a pixel named Tippy. At the realization that Timpani was alive, he started a heel turn a bit in his plans, but felt guilty at what he had done so far. Declaring Lumiere dead, he goaded Mario and Timpani to confront him,
Lumiere
putting fate in the hands
dead.
of who wins between them. Mario does win, and Bleck feels satisfied knowing that the worlds will continue with Tippy alive in them. Too bad Dementio shows up and spoils everything.
And yep,
Steal all the credit for work that other people do.
In Dementio's final
Oh, I
act,
hate
he
this
becomes
guy.
a poor sport and decides to destroy all worlds anyway if he can't win. To counter this, Bleck and Tippy decide to do their own wedding ceremony to reseal the Chaos Heart for good measure, but at the cost of their own existence. It works. Lumiere and Timpani disappear, gone from the world,
Honestly, heartfelt.
but together once again. It's no wonder why Bleck
they're
is so
actually in the image.
popular. He and Dementio were the best parts of Super Paper Mario, and their inclusion made even the change in gameplay worth it for this series. It is disappointing the direction Paper Mario went in afterward, but with the resurgence
True.
of Mario RPGs and Brothership leading the way for that, I hope we get a Super Paper Mario remake in the future just so we can enjoy the chaos once more.
double that so I can
as
actually
long as
play
they
it.
fix some of these level designs too.
And we move on to the bronze medal of sympathy. It goes to
Well, how about now? Now
Wheatley.
who's a moron? Could a moron punch you into this pit? Ah! Could a moron do that?
Y'all saw this one coming. Oh, not the plot twist, just the fact that Wheatley is on here. And why shouldn't he be?
I kinda did it.
Wheatley was such an obvious candidate for this list that one of my writers pushed relentlessly for him to be number 1. But alas, there were at least 2 other villains that managed to snatch the crown from him. With that said, what do you say we give this blue British ball of metal his moment in the sun? As if we haven't done that already. Wheatley doesn't start out as the primary antagonist of Portal 2. Rather, his goal is to assist.
Weirdly enough, I had never actually played the original Portal until already playing Portal 2. So, whoops.
Assist us in escaping from Aperture Science and the clutches of the psychopathic AI that needs no introduction. And his plan works. Until he realizes that he was designed to be a moron, goes absolutely berserk at the revelation, puts Gladys into a potato, and I assume you know the rest. With the tables turned, we have to find Potatoes in Old Aperture and remove Wheatley from his new body. It's here that I want to point out that, for the most part, the decisions that Wheatley makes aren't 100% his decisions. He straight up tells us that his new body has an itch that forces him to test us. And it's only when he finds out that we can't scratch that itch anymore that he decides this is the part where he kills us. Gladys even comes to the really...
Yeah, that gets said like 4 times over by Wheatley, the chapter, by GLaDOS, and an achievement. All of them just saying, this is the part where he kills you.
...herself that she's the consciousness of Carolyn. And similar to Wheatley, it was being plugged into this massive machine that caused her to become psychopathic.
That's right.
We even considered putting both Wheatley and Gladys together on this list, but ultimately we just felt that Wheatley had her beat. Why? Simple. His personality.
Simple, yep.
Remember the etymology behind the term sympathetic are the terms sympathy and pathetic? While I wouldn't necessarily call Wheatley pathetic, dude's just as quirky and adorable in his new body as he was early on in the game. Even his efforts to try and kill us are kind of endearing.
Yeah.
Would you just jump into that
really
pit
pathetic.
That deadly pit.
Like, oh, the Widow Blue Ball wants to be a big baddie. It almost makes you want to do what he says just to validate him. As a matter of fact, you can, and his reaction to it is just as adorable.
Oh, wow, good. I didn't think that was going to work.
Now, I know that Wheatley isn't completely innocent here. He did still take over the facility and tried to kill us. Also, he said a lot of mean things to us about being overweight, brain damaged, and adopted. That last one was enough to spark internet controversy, by the way. Plus, Wheatley does spout a lot of negative stuff about us during his boss fight. But a lot of these things he says are due to the infrastructure screwing up his mind to make him angry or just unaware that what he's saying is really, really rude. And when he's reaming into us during his boss fight, it's actually kind of sad because we know who he was before he took over the facility.
That's right.
Also, come on. Those comments about being an adopted fatty? Gladys's comments were worse.
Congratulations. Not on the test. Most people emerge from suspension terribly undernourished.
Oh,
I want to congratulate you on beating the odds and somehow managing to pack on a few pounds.
Anyway, for as painful as it is, the game says we must put Wheatley out of commission, otherwise Aperture Science becomes a mushroom cloud. Well, I suppose we could just throw him into Android hell for a few years after we put Gladys back in the Gladys... Did you just yeet him into space?
Yeet!
I finally defeated Third!
Father.
What's especially sad is that Wheatley immediately sobers up once he's out of Gladys's body, wishing he could just see us again and tell us he's sorry. Did we really need to banish him into space?
You kind of have him by accident.
You could argue that we had no other choice, and while we didn't, Gladys was the one who chucked him into space, not us. What, didn't want to pull him back in, give him a second chance or something? Why is it all about death with you, Gladys? You can also argue that he did nothing to alleviate his actions, but how could he have? He really never had an opportunity. Even then, he knows the facility is falling apart and wants to try and fix it. He also points out that he's gonna do it after he kills you. Not because he wants to, but because he wants to run the facility without it exploding, and we just so happen to be in his way. Even when he's hanging on by the tiniest of threads to Gladys's body, he wants to fix Aperture Science. And once he's in space, he wants to alleviate all of his actions. Not just destroying the facility, but also including killing you. And now, he'll never get the chance to. It just really makes you wish...
Yeah, but that also does put him in his own kind of robot hell because he's stuck with that damn space core.
We could get another game where we bring him back to Aperture. You don't count!
Yeah, that's Lego wheelie. On to the silver medal, and it goes to... Ooh, Spectre Knight, huh? So Spectre Knight gets the silver medal. Okay.
You'd be surprised how this goofy little tribute to the 8-bit era has some actual frickin' depth. In each of Shovel Knight's 4 campaigns, the evil Enchantress, formerly Shield Knight, uses a magical amulet to ensure conquest with her Order of No Quarter, a group of 8 powerful knights
I
with
still
sworn
like that
loyalty
name.
to their mistress who gave them power. Any of the campaigns can be considered exquisite additions to the set,
That's
but
true.
there's something really special to be said about Spectre of Torment. Across the members of the Order, Spectre Knight shines above the rest amidst the darkness in which he resides. Spectre Knight serves as a cynical boss fight or secondary antagonist in 3 of the campaigns, but takes on the role of the villain protagonist in Spectre of Torment.
Villain
Actually,
protagonist,
the formation of the Order of No
Okay.
Quarter is the primary plot of Spectre Knight's campaign. He must recruit 8 knights to serve the Enchantress. It's a very clever plot excuse to make Spectre Knight face the same bosses and levels as the last 2 campaigns.
And gives a
His
good
reward
reason.
for onboarding more baddies? A locket that will bring him back to life and restore him to his former self, a cunning human warrior named Donovan. At certain
Oh, wow.
intervals between the levels throughout the campaign, we are
So he is undead.
taken to flashbacks from when Spectre Knight was the human Donovan, playing as him through the backstory that brought him to where he is now. Donovan, along with his partner in crime and dear friend Luan, is scaling the infamous Tower of Fate to retrieve the all-powerful amulet, the very same that
Oh.
transformed the noble Shield Knight
Very
into
one.
the evil Enchantress. Indeed, Shield Knight is there when Donovan and Luan finally reach the top. Shield Knight warns the 2 of the amulet's dangers. Luan suggests retreat, but Donovan is not so easily convinced. He fights Shield Knight in a hopeless act of recklessness that only ends with Shield Knight becoming the Enchantress upon contact with the amulet.
Ah,
The death of
jeez.
Donovan and the collateral death of Luan. Only
Damn.
a deceased Donovan, revived and turned Spectre Knight by the newly awakened Enchantress, remains. At other intervals between levels, we encounter a young man named Rise, who had briefly appeared in the other campaigns. Spectre Knight is generally rather cold and impatient, yet is regularly and unusually patient with and almost protective of Rise. The Enchantress
It's
is
his
not
son,
so
isn't it?
patient, cursing Rise into the subservient Dark Rise upon their first encounter. Well, Spectre Knight's strange character deviation when interacting with Rise fades from its mystery after a post-credits cutscene reveals that Rise is the son of Luan.
I
Donovan
was
promised to
close.
protect
I was
Rise in the event
close.
that Luan should die first. The very locket that holds the power to restore life, the one possessed by the Enchantress as a reward for Spectre Knight, is a family heirloom given to Donovan by Luan as a sign of trust and family. Before the climax of the campaign,
Damn.
the Black Knight reveals the Enchantress's prior identity as Shield Knight within earshot of Spectre Knight. Holding a grudge against Shield Knight as the one who caused all this to happen, Spectre Knight breaks his
kinda.
loyalty to the Enchantress and swears to defeat her as vengeance for that fateful night. Spectre Knight scales the Tower of Fate once more and defeats the cursed version of Rise conjured by the Enchantress. He won. Then and there, Spectre Knight could have let Rise become the final knight, and then the gift of resurrection would be his, as promised by the Enchantress. But he didn't do that, did he?
And he instead
Before a
does.
defeated Rise succumbs to the Enchantress's clutches, Spectre Knight halts the endeavor, pleading with the Enchantress to spare Rise from the Order of No Quarter, offering himself instead to become her eternal servant and to use the locket to save Rise's life instead of restoring his own. He fought,
Respectable.
he journeyed, he did everything to make that locket his, and he gave it all away in an instant for the very thing he cares for above anything else without a second thought. He will remain
Truly
an undead
respectable.
puppet of the Enchantress, but at least he can keep Luan's boy safe once more. Perhaps Spectre Knight wanted his life again simply to have it for his own sake. Or he wanted to live again to redeem his actions after his last actions took Luan, to fulfill his
I can
vow
see
to
that.
protect Rise. Becoming the final knight of the Order is inevitable from the player's perspective, yet it seems to loom for Spectre Knight regardless of whether you played his other campaigns or not. He has clawed his way through the harrowing task to
fought all he could.
undo what happened in the Tower of Fate that night. But bringing himself back to life won't undo Shield Knight's corruption, and it won't resurrect Luan. There was no one else to blame but himself for what happened.
Mm-hmm.
One wonders if it would have gotten to this point if Donovan were content with death or had a better rationale at the tower. His campaign almost mirrors the 5 stages
Truly,
of
you never
grief,
know.
cycling between the first 4 before a begrudging acceptance. There are many people who would say that they would die for the ones that they love.
Oh
But
yeah,
who would
easily.
die multiple times for the ones that they loved? Who would die every day? Who would damn themselves for eternity for the ones that they loved? And what makes Spectre Knight very sympathetic is that he clearly would.
And he did, technically. And now, on to the honorable mentions.
Guys,
Who is it?
Tales of Gilia, a well-intentioned
Oh, okay.
extremist who wants folks to look out for each other, and the party's unfortunately in his way. Mr. Freeze, Arkham series. It's
Oh, well,
Mr. Freeze. You know the backstory.
of course,
Come on.
it's
the
Mr. Freeze.
Mastermind, Ace Attorney Investigations 2. Sure, they're not a good person, but they helped Edgeworth fight the real villains when you get down to it. Modern
Oh,
Kirby
nice.
villains. Hey, Fire Emblem, can I copy your homework? Okay, just change it up a bit so it doesn't look like you copied. Rahab, Ocean Hunter. Wait, why is a deity of chaos born in a peaceful ocean? Oh, that's why.
What was all of that? Oh, we move on to the golden medal. And it goes to...
I've talked about Celeste before, detailing how well Chapter 7 Summit wraps
Oh,
up the
yeah.
story mode as the finishing touch before Farewell ruins your life. It's a fantastic level among many others within a beautifully written game. And on the note of the game's writing,
What I love about
let's
it.
be real. We all know who the real star of the show is.
You think you're above me? Answer me!
Oh, it's her. Yeah, your
Right,
dog
so
counterpart.
Celeste is a mountain. Crazy, right? Well, in everyone's favorite hyper-metaphorical indie title, not every mountain that Madeline climbs is a giant physical rock. She must learn to deal with herself, with Badeline. Oh, my stamps and strawberries, this is a villain that fits the bill. Well, villain is a loose term because Badeline isn't necessarily evil per se. She's the embodiment of the parts of Madeline that she'd rather disregard. Her
Yep.
deepest fears, intrusive thoughts, personal truths, and darkest secrets. She is a shadow, the true self. Quite simply, they are the same person and combined into a greater whole, into a complete human being.
Just
It's
two
a lot like
pieces.
the relationship between Anxiety and Riley from Inside Out 2. I could just end number 1 there and say, if you don't sympathize with Badeline, you don't sympathize with the main protagonist in a game about depression, and let you guilt trip yourself as the credits roll. But it's never quite that simple. Despite their
games about
inherent
depression,
internal
huh?
inseparability, try saying that 5 times fast, Madeline's darker half does have a voice and thoughts of her own, as well as a separate physical form under the mysterious power of Celeste Mountain. This visual separation lets us see Madeline's constant inner turmoil from the inside out. When Madeline wants
Useful.
to climb the mountain, Badeline refutes out of fear that's, more often than not, masked beneath faux confidence and intimidation. When Madeline realizes she would rather summit Celeste alone without her less appealing shadow getting in the way, Badeline violently lashes out because she's afraid of
Oh,
being
damn it.
discarded.
You are many things, darling, but you are not
Did you actually see as he broke free from the profile?
a mountain climber. I thought we'd never get rid of him. You owe me one. The mountain tore us apart.
If Madeline undertakes a new adventure that changes her into a greater, stronger person, what's to say Badeline wouldn't be weakened or even gone for good? To ourselves
You never
and
know.
Madeline, personal growth that conquers your fears could never be a bad thing. To her reflection, it's nothing short of betrayal and abandonment. These are the thoughts that scare Madeline into the corners of her trauma and confine her to her comfort zone. But she can't hold her back forever. It can be daunting to leave the
Sometimes you have to
safety
break
of what
out.
you know, but Madeline has desires stronger than her fears. As if summoning a mountain with zero prior experience via masochistic programming wasn't enough of a hurdle, Madeline is always there, belittling you, chasing you, getting in the way when and wherever possible. Deep down, that voice in Madeline's head will always be a greater obstacle than the wind or platform. Not again!
Oh,
Celeste,
damn
you
it.
probably
Oh.
really don't like this mirror demon spewing such abusive rhetoric at the precious hero. It's vile to an extent before you remember that it's actually Madeline taunting and tormenting herself.
Yep.
Madeline is her own worst enemy.
A very
Well,
common
aren't we
trope
all?
and very
Nevertheless,
classic.
they must work together. For her traits of goodness and strength to shine, she must make peace with the aspects of her personality that aren't quite so savory. Now, it's worth noting that Badeline is actually a fan term, and that this part of Madeline is
Oh.
officially named Madeline's Reflection. The developers know she isn't
okay.
evil. The less pleasant aspects of herself aren't usually evil. Often what we claim to be the worst parts are only what we see in a mirror, not necessarily something picked up on by others. Now, I'm fortunate to not have clinical depression or anxiety, but I know people who do, and they often describe it as feeling like a cornered animal, a gentle creature feeling afraid with no apparent way out of a situation. Playing Celeste and experiencing the dialogue, inner dialogue between Madeline and Madeline is something parallel to many of us. Perhaps not everybody sacrifices their Reaper's soul for a friend's son or cries for help from space, but we have all been our own obstacle, and we've rather all been the person we would rather not become.
I felt that before.
Reflection is written not to villainize her thoughts and ambitions, but to humanize them. It makes these two one of the best examples of a perfect foil dynamic between the hero and antagonist.
Completely.
Every other hero has some ultimate evil to deal with as is. Imagine finding what their own fearful reflections are whispering the entire time. But it's a part of them, and your feelings are a part of you too. It's being able to accept who we are and work with ourselves regardless that brings out our greatness. I'm Josh Scorcher, and remember, the next time you see someone doing something despicable, they could just be crying for help. Or they could just be plain old dicks.
Yeah, not all of them are redeemable. Oh boy. Alright everyone, well that's going to be the end of today's video, and I hope you all enjoyed this. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe for more. Link to the original will be in the description below, and I'll see all of you all next time when we flick back on. Until then, this is Fox, signing out. Peace.